The humid, oppressive air of Jacksonville, Florida, hung heavy, pregnant with the fury of Hurricane Milton. October 9th, 2024, was a day of frantic preparations as residents braced for the storm's inevitable onslaught. Amongst them was a 71-year-old woman, a mother seeking refuge in her son's home on Pheasant Drive, nestled in a quiet, unassuming neighborhood near Bush Drive on the north side of Jacksonville. Little did she know, she was about to stumble upon a scene of unimaginable horror, a secret hidden within the walls of her son's house, a secret sealed by brutal violence. The ages of the individuals involved make it more heartbreaking. Kristin Carrier, at 43, was a woman whose life was violently cut short. Robert Hendricks, at 32, stands accused of committing a heinous crime that will forever alter the course of his life. His 71-year-old mother, a witness to unspeakable horror, will forever carry the burden of her discovery. Her son, 32-year-old Robert Hendricks, resided in the small, unassuming house. Robert Hendricks, 32, had a history of run-ins with the law. His prior criminal record included convictions for felonies, which is why his possession of a firearm was a separate, immediate charge. The information shows that he had a history of violent behavior. His past relationships were described by some as turbulent. Neighbors reported that he could be erratic and that there had been disturbances at the residence in the past. His girlfriend, 43-year-old Kristin Carrier, was a frequent visitor. The storm, however, brought an unexpected twist, forcing the mother to seek shelter, a refuge that would transform into a nightmare. As Hurricane Milton raged outside, bringing with it torrential rains and fierce winds, the tension inside the home must have been almost touchable. There had been prior indications of volatility within that address. Detectives later discovered that, at approximately 3 p.m. on October 9th, a witness heard Kristin Carrier's voice, a cry that was filled with an unknown pain, emanating from one of the home's bedrooms. That was one of the last times that she was ever heard alive. Final events leading to Kristin's death, however, are a story that paints a vivid and tragic series of events. The following day, October 10th, the storm had subsided, leaving behind a trail of destruction, but also a sense of fragile relief. Robert Hendricks, perhaps attempting to maintain an appearance of normalcy, decided to run errands, leaving his mother alone in the house. This brief absence provided a horrifying moment of discovery. The mother, perhaps seeking to tidy the home, ventured into the master bedroom. There, concealed beneath a large brown tarp, she found a disturbing shape. A shape that, upon closer inspection, revealed itself to be a human body. It was the lifeless body of Kristin Carrier, wrapped like discarded refuse. The scene was gruesome, a testament to the brutality of her demise. Kristin Carrier, 43, was more than just a victim. She was a woman with a life, dreams, and connections. She was known to friends as a kind, though sometimes troubled, soul. She had faced hardships in her life and was trying to build a better future. Those who knew her said that she was hoping to find stability in her life, that she was trying to find a place where she felt safe. Her relationships were complex, and her connection with Robert Hendricks was marked by volatility. She was trying to establish herself and was working in the service industry. Panic-stricken, the mother did not confront her son immediately. Instead, she called her daughter. She didn't linger, didn't try to rationalize or understand. Her first impulse was to call her daughter, Robert's sister, a lifeline in the chaos. "You have to come," she whispered, her voice trembling, the words barely audible. "You have to see what I found." The arrival of her daughter was a moment of fragile solidarity. Together, they faced the unthinkable. And then Robert returned. Robert's sister and they together tried to process what to do. Robert Hendricks came back from the store, and his mother and sister decided to confront him with their grisly discovery. The image of Kristin Carrier, lifeless and concealed beneath that crude shroud of tarp, was seared into her mind, a grotesque tableau that defied comprehension. It wasn't a calculated decision, not a logical progression of thought. It was a primal instinct that drove her. Shock, raw and visceral, gripped her. The air seemed thick, the silence in the house a deafening roar. How could this be? Her son, the boy she had raised, was somehow connected to this horror. The confrontation was brief, a flicker of raw emotion in the aftermath of the storm as they both approached him. He became animated, a word that felt woefully inadequate to describe the sudden, unsettling shift in his demeanor. It wasn't the anger that truly frightened them, though that was present. It was the frantic energy, the desperate, almost manic attempt to deflect, to deny, to somehow erase what they had seen. At that moment, the mother knew. The unspoken fear that had been gnawing at her since the discovery solidified into an annoying certainty. This wasn't just a horrific accident. This was something far darker, something that demanded to be exposed. The decision was made not through deliberation, but through a shared, instinctive understanding. The two women, undoubtedly fearing for their safety, left quickly, their footsteps echoing in the quiet street, a stark contrast to the chaos they had left behind at the residence, and promptly notified the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office. When detectives arrived at the scene, the house became a tableau of horror. The master bedroom, the once private sanctuary, was now a crime scene. Various blood patterns on the walls and floor painted a macabre picture of the violence that had taken place. The discovery of a knife and a baseball bat further underscored the brutality of the attack. Kristin Carrier's body, retrieved from its concealment beneath the tarp, revealed the full extent of the violence. She had suffered multiple stab wounds and gunshot wounds. The brutality of the attack speaks to the ferocity of the crime. The act was personal, violent, and filled with rage that can only come from a dark and very hate-filled place. The initial arrest of Robert Hendricks was on charges unrelated to the murder itself. He was taken into custody due to his status as a convicted felon in possession of a firearm and for the possession of a controlled substance, specifically methamphetamine, found in the home. Those initial charges served to put him behind bars, giving detectives the time they needed to investigate the homicide. Those small crimes provided a jail cell that would hold him until enough evidence was found for the much more serious crime. The investigation was methodical and thorough. Detectives examined the crime scene, collecting evidence and interviewing witnesses. They analyzed cell phone data, which placed Kristin Carrier in the home at the approximate time of the murder, and confirmed that, based on the data, Robert Hendricks was also at home. This data also played a strong role in showing that besides those two individuals, no one else was inside the home at the time of the homicide. The evidence, piece by piece, began to form a damning narrative. The time it took to arrest Hendricks on murder charges stemmed from the necessity to build a strong, irrefutable case. Detectives had to carefully piece together the timeline of events, analyze the evidence, and establish a clear motive. The evidence collected from the scene was sent to the Florida Department of Evidence for analysis, but those results were redacted from the affidavits, further increasing the amount of time required to charge him for the murder of Kristin Carrier. Because he was already charged with another crime, law enforcement was given the luxury of taking the time required for them to complete the investigation. On February 19, 2025, several months after the discovery of Kristin Carrier's body, Robert Hendricks was formally charged with second-degree murder and tampering with evidence. These charges reflect the gravity of his alleged crimes. Second-degree murder implies a killing that was intentional but not premeditated, a crime of passion or rage. The charge of tampering with evidence speaks to the attempts made to conceal the crime, the act of wrapping the body in a tarp, a desperate attempt to erase the consequences of his actions. The court proceedings were marked by intense emotion. Kristin Carrier's family and friends attended hearings, seeking justice for her death. Robert Hendricks's demeanor in court was closely observed. The prosecution presented a strong case, laying out the evidence and painting a picture of a violent crime. The defense worked to challenge the prosecution's evidence. The victim's family made victim impact statements, expressing their grief and demanding accountability. The courtroom was filled with tension. The punishment for second-degree murder in Florida can range from a lengthy prison sentence to life in prison, depending on the specifics of the case. Tampering with evidence also carries significant penalties, further adding to the potential punishment. He is currently being held without bond. His next court date is set for March 12th. Due to him being accused of murder, he will not be eligible for the $75,003 bond. Pheasant Drive, on the north side of Jacksonville, is a quiet, working-class neighborhood. Residents were shocked by the events that unfolded. Neighbors described a sense of unease, with some admitting they had heard arguments coming from the Hendricks residence. The quiet nature of the neighborhood added to the shock of the crime. The idea that such violence could occur in their peaceful community was deeply disturbing. The unassuming neighborhood on the north side of Jacksonville adds a chilling layer to the story. This was not a crime committed in the shadows of a dark alley, but within the supposed safety of a home. It was a betrayal of trust, a violent act committed against a woman who sought companionship and safety. This story is a stark reminder of the prevalence of domestic violence, a hidden epidemic that often festers behind closed doors. It underscores the importance of seeking help, of breaking the silence that allows such violence to continue. The National Domestic Violence Hotline, with its 24/7 availability and multilingual support, serves as a lifeline for those trapped in abusive relationships. The events that unfolded in that Jacksonville home are a tragedy, a story of violence, betrayal, and the devastating consequences of unchecked rage. The echoes of Kristin Carrier's screams heard on that fateful afternoon will forever linger in the memory of those who seek justice. This is a story that should incite a reaction, not just of horror, but a call for change. It is a demand that society do more to stop violent crimes. Subscribe and stay glued to this channel for more crime reports.